afraid this water's gonna fall over. The bottom of this thing is like wonky because it's like, paper thin plastic.
Yeah. James Hetfield.
You a fan of Metallica?
Yeah.
My daughter is obsessed. It's the only way I can get her to go to sleep.
Shut
Enter Sandman.
Of all things.
And she's like, swear to God. 3 o'clock in the morning, she's screaming. You're like, I turn on TV in the living room. I sit there and I hold her a certain way and I turn on Enter Sandman. And she goes like this for like 4 minutes. And then she's like,
man, my daughter's obsessed with Elmo. I think they'll probably be a little different.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode. I've got with me none other than the one and only John Malecki.
Pleasure to be here. Thank
Welcome,
you for
sir.
having me. Yeah.
Of course.
Here on the family vacation, taking some time to actually do something fun.
I know. I missed you last year. And then we did a virtual podcast. We have done one before. So we're not going to get into like John's history. We'll like touch on it for 2 seconds. But if you're interested in like his like background and as an NFL football player and what it took to go from like NFL to being a YouTuber and all stuff, you can go watch that other one. We'll get into more interesting stuff today.
What couldn't be more interesting than not talking about football or YouTube? I don't even know what else is out there. So.
Oh, all right. I got a dad joke for us. I used to be addicted to the hokey pokey, but then I turned myself around.
Oh boy. I got to get one of those. That's pretty keen.
It's fun, right? My mom, I used to like every episode, I was like trying to look up a funny dad joke that I haven't told before. And then one year for Christmas, my mom got me this dad joke calendar.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. So I just search through it. I find one I like, and then I don't have to stress myself out.
Yeah.
Over
Some guys are just on point with the dad jokes. Like all the time they've got something.
Yeah.
I used to have a podcast, and my partner was he's 10 years older than me, and so he's like midst of being peak dad, and his dad jokes were just so fluid and perfect. And we were doing the podcast before I was even married or even close to being a dad, and I was always jealous. Now that I'm a dad.
It's funny because like,
I even step it up? Where do I study?
I know, right? There should be like a dad joke university or something.
It could be a good digital course.
Oh,
might be coming out next year.
At tacticalbabygear.com /John Malecki.
Dad joke you. I'll be your first.
Oh my
first
gosh.
influencer.
Yeah, and then it's funny because you have a bunch of them in the memory bank, but then on demand you like freeze up. You're like, I got nothing.
Yeah.
And you sound like an
I wonder
idiot.
what that moment is when the switch changes to they just become natural.
My dad pulls it off, and they're so bad that growing up, they weren't even dad jokes. All my friends just referred to him as Mr. Brody jokes.
Yeah.
Like they were very clearly bad.
Just a category.
It was like,
these are terrible.
That's a Mr. Brody joke if I ever heard
Now
of.
they're probably all jealous. They're like, remember this joke?
Yeah, I wish I had
tell.
that skill. I'm like, definitely didn't get that one. Anyways,
Damn.
How's vacation been? Good?
Awesome, man. I mean, we live up in the Northeast. I'm from Pittsburgh, so coming down here, getting a little bit of a change in weather, even though it hasn't been the best week.
You brought the rain with you.
I know.
Except for we did go fishing the other day, and the rain held out.
It was
like the driest day of the week.
And it was also amazing because it was overcast, so we weren't getting like blistered by the sun, and I didn't have my skin peeling off because I wear like long sleeves and stuff. I'm very.
You have like my ginger, like
I love the sun.
skin.
I got Polish skin, so I turn. My mother is a full blood Italian. She's looking golden bronze and wonderful in the sun, and I'm like a pig, like literally a pig over a spit. Yeah. So I avoid the sun at all costs, just because it's like, I could put on SPF 2000 and still
Forget about it.
It's getting through.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a nice week. Weather's been, besides some rain in the afternoons, it's been solid. Daughter on the beach. She's 17 months old, so it's just chasing her around. She's getting into the ocean for the first time. And
put sand in her mouth,
stuff, eating sand, dumping it on her head. Yeah.
You're like, no.
Yeah. But it's been a good week. It's always fun to get away and get some reflection time and just change of scenery.
Or slow down for a few minutes.
Yeah, especially when you're ripping at small business owner pace, which you can attest to.
Well, not only small business, but you're a YouTuber, so that's like a double whammy because not only are you worried about like the business on a day to day and how all that operates, but like you're creating so much content for YouTube and Instagram and TikTok and everything else. It's like you're just a content machine, and that's a bigger job than running the business. I think.
Yeah, no, I mean that is the business because it has to take that much bandwidth to be able to produce content full time on a consistent level. And I think a lot of people that make content, you know, one of your top priorities as a content creator has to be consistency. You know, you got people that are buying into your brand, people that are showing up, people that are into what you're doing. You have to give them content frequently.
Right.
And so just because I'm on vacation, I mean, like I was working through edits this morning and thumbnails for this week's post because we're not going to miss just because I'm not there. And just like if you're in any other type of business, just because you're on vacation, the business doesn't stop. And a lot of people don't realize that. They're like,
I was just about to say,
backlog all that
exactly.
content. You have to have it
That's
prepared.
hard to do.
Oh yeah, especially when you're building things.
Yes.
So like for me, it's double time constraint on the build process itself and completion of whatever I'm doing in the video, and then the video production side of it too. And a lot of content creators, you know, their production side, they're not making something unless they're not my niche.
Sure.
So they have the luxury of like they can go film a bunch of stuff and then
it talking head stuff. It's like, don't you wish you could get away with that?
Yeah, like I'm like I have to build the thing and film the thing and then
post produce
it goes into production
and then cut it up for 3 different platforms and everything else. And it's like, oh my god.
Yeah. So
what is the average sort of time? I mean, I know the projects vary, but like if you had to put an average to it, one project from my ideation of whatever research you're going to do or whatever for the project, starting and finishing the project, and then post production. What does that average timeline look like on that?
I mean, obviously it's always going to depend on the scope of the project, right? So like right now we're doing this series. It's a 3-part series on a glass river dining table. That's like a super intricate high-end build, right? For a client too. So it has to be like pristine. Perfect. It's not for me. So I'm not going to like,
you're like whatever.
Screw it at the end. And then like, it looks fine. No. So it's like the outside of all the client acquisition and conversational kind of stuff, we'll just go from like design. So it's probably like a couple days to get a design hashed in and then order the materials. So you're looking at like, say, maybe a week just to get something on paper that you're like, we're going to build this. It's probably been let's say man hour wise, like 3 to 4 week process to get the project built. Because there's so many little small tedious things going into it. We've got glass, we've got resin, we've got metal that's being powder coated and all that stuff. So like finishing and getting all that touched up. And then shooting all that on top of it while we're doing it. We've made 2 videos. We're working on the 3rd. They're actually working on it right now back at the shop. So that's 3 weeks of shooting and then 3 weeks. It's a week post-production on each one. So what's that?
So that series, 3-part series is going to be months and
I mean, we started the project back in like June.
Yeah.
So, and
now that's not an average though. That's kind of that extreme.
So then you have those side of things,
which is similar to like the conference table you built for your neighbors or whatever. That was like that super tricky with all the lights and crazy stuff in it.
Yeah. So cool. We had like a local company that project took like 3 months to build.
Really?
And what happens is like, I don't powder coat in house. So you send a part out, right? And
it takes a week to get
I don't have a water jet. So we were getting the stainless all water jet. So like that takes, we got weeks and gaps and all that kind of stuff. And that production schedule all over the place. Making good content requires time and people. So we're traveling to go film things. We're coming back and making sure that like that timeline looks right. And you got all that kind of BS that goes into it too. So more or less, like if you're building something, you're going to at least double, if not triple your time. Just make a video on it while building it. So it gets pretty intense. And it's also one of the reasons that like being in the DIY or the maker community is quite difficult as a content creator to put out content weekly. And there's only a couple of us that do it weekly. I mean, I'm talking like 4 of the entire space that are like, Bob does it, I do it, and maybe a couple other people. And I'm these are like I shouldn't negate anyone. I mean, I'm not like, I don't know every single person in the makerspace, but the people that have been doing it for a while, weekly is like stupid. Some guys are doing it, bi-weekly. They're super happy. Once every 3 or 4 weeks, great. They're hitting fulfillments. But we're actually pushing to be twice a week. July, we were actually hitting twice a week, and we're pivoting our content slightly to doing bigger projects in segments. And a little teaser for your audience. I bought a vintage truck, and we're going to be remodeling that. You're a car guy. I should say an automotive person. It's not specifically just cars, but so with that, I've never worked on vehicles. So we're going to go through my journey as a builder, maker, and having all this experience in like homes and furniture and stuff,
right?
And seeing if I can learn vehicles. And it's mostly because we need a shop truck. But we'll break that down.
And it's super rad.
Oh yeah.
It's a pretty unique truck.
Oh yeah.
Because you don't see a quad cab. What is the actual proper name for
crew
that
cab?
truck?
Yeah. So it's a 70s. It's a I think it's a 77 F250 crew cab long bed. So the truck is like
with a beautiful patina.
Beautiful. It's like 30 feet long. It's like a boat on the street. But there was only like a couple thousand of this kind of truck made, and they were all for service members or forestry. So you would chuck, 6 guys into a truck drive in the middle of the woods to go put out a forest fire, or firefighters, that kind of stuff. So they didn't make them for like the family driver that a crew cab is now.
Right. But everyone has a freaking crew cab truck.
And it's because they are better than buying an SUV. I own one. I've owned 2. This is my third one. But anyway, so we'll be doing segments of that. We bought the sawmill. The sawmill is a little faster turnaround because it's like me learning how to use and run a sawmill and getting to be.
It's comical.
So, yeah, and it's like I'm trying to have fun, right? I'm trying to bring people into the hobby. I'm not here to educate anyone. Like I want you to get a laugh out of at my expense, and that's kind of what my strategy is with the content.
And, I mean, on the last episode, I like introduced you as like a professional goofball.
Yeah,
I mean, like you're just out there having fun,
and I think that's like the problem with content creators is a lot of people, and myself included, for years try to put yourself into this like
you're the expert.
Yeah, or this category that you're not in, right? Like I have to act a certain way. I have to be, very, teaching specific in my content. I have to be an expert to talk on these certain. You don't, right?
Right.
Like how I'm going to date us right now generationally, but like Tim the Toolman Taylor was the coolest dude, right? Yes. And he was just out there doing fun stuff on his show. And then you had, his counterpart, Al Borland, who was like the very rigid, like, we're going to do like this. And you could be either one of those. But my whole goal and vision behind my channel is to show people how fun and entertaining working with your hands is.
Right.
And get more people into, kind of get back to
doing stuff yourself.
And doing stuff yourself. And that's it. Like, that is it. I have expertise and a lot of experience in certain things. But by no means do I sit here and go, I'm a phenomenal fine furniture maker. Like, no. Like I make trash, like compared to a lot of those guys, right? I make better things than a lot of other people, but I also don't make anything close to being considered, one of the best furniture makers around. And some people look at me that way, and I'm like, dude, you just got to see better stuff, and then you'll realize why I'm not even close. I got decades before I'll be anywhere close. So as a professional goofball, like you said, for me, I'm glad that comes through because we're having a blast doing it. Like the stuff you work on, we were talking about it while we were fishing and stuff. You do it because it's fun, a lot of it. And a lot of us have those hobbies when we're in the garage or in the backyard or whatever. And that's a moment of release, especially as a dad. You get time away or time for, the family. And I find a lot of value in that too. In my audience is that we're all building stuff for, our wives and kids or partners or whatever. And we find a lot of value in that. And so when you can find that time, you should be able to enjoy it. It shouldn't be high stress. And
shouldn't. And there's like, what's cool about it is just like the gratification at the end of it. They're like, I made this thing, right? And that's what I love. Like, I'm just a builder, maker kind of person, whether it's car stuff, which is like my sort of main category of what I'm doing. But like, I make or
a seamstress.
Or sewing stuff or whatever, or even building a business, which is a much longer process to kind of go from like, this was tactical baby gear was an idea at one time. And now it's a big business and it's like, it's really cool.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have that like instant gratification. It's an infinite game. Like it's just going to keep going. You're not like, game. I started this thing and now it's a finished thing and I can move on to the next. And there's something about that I like. Cause it's like, I don't want to say I'm ADD, but eventually you're like, it's not interesting anymore. You kind of get burnt out. You're like, all right, whatever. Next, I want something new to focus on, whatever. Do you, I've noticed from you, and this was a question I kind of had last night while I was thinking about the podcast today. Have you you seem to have a very creative vision. Do you think of yourself as a creative person like that?
To be honest, not necessarily. Like I would say I have creative thoughts, but I don't look at myself as a creative. And like I employ creative people that I look at and I'm like, man, you're so creative.
Yeah, but when you're designing like some of your pieces, or the most recent video I saw was, you're redoing your office and you were like, I got an idea for the desk you wanted to build, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't quite see the vision. You were explaining it and then you were like, okay, we're going to route this side. The metal's going to lay over this, And I was like, what the hell is he building? I was like trying to think about it. And a lot of times you'll sketch some doodle thing and it's like, okay, I see what you're building. But then when I started like seeing it come together, I was like, this is sick. Yeah. Like this is going to be a sick desk,
I mean,
But you do that a lot. And you always have the vision in your head. Maybe you can't always put it on paper, like the crazy tree thing or whatever. That's like a total experiment. Usually a massive fail of some sort. You're like, well, that didn't work. Let's try something else. But you have these like wild ideas, and maybe they're inspired by something you saw or whatever. But it's, as somebody who's a viewer, and like I think of you as a very creative thinker. Yeah. And probably that, I'm sure that translates into creative problem solving. But I just wondered if you were like, oh, I'm super creative. I love being creative.
Use that term, creative thinker, as a term to better describe me than being a creative person. And if I could, let me draw a line between the two. At least my interpretation is that, like, I think the difference in being an amateur and a professional is that professionals have experience to solve problems in different ways. You got the old adage, it's like something, I don't know, your electrical panel's all screwed up, right? Something's not working, an outlet's not working. You call an electrician, you've put 20 hours into trying to run the wires back and figure all this stuff out and blah, 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 blah. The electrician comes, shows up, turns two things, charges you $350. Why am I paying $350? It took you $5. You know, like, I've been doing this for 30 years. You're paying me to know what wires to turn, kind of thing. And like, that's as a creative thinker, and even having employees that are younger in my business, when it comes to building things, like I take a step back and look at it. Like, it'll be 10 years, next January, that I've been working for myself and building my hands.
10 years already?
Since I've been outside of football. Yeah. And that's a lot of time, to just try new things, experiment, gain experience, learn, screw it up, fix it, and do all that. And then I got guys with only like 2 or 3 or 4 years of experience. And mostly what ends up happening is that, like, I don't do things to any better result than they would. I just have much more experience with whatever that thing might be in order to fix it or change it or adapt it or do it quicker or whatever that might be. So creatively thinking, I'm always trying to solve problems before problems pop up. And I think that as you become older and wiser in any regards of life, that's something that naturally happens. Yeah. And for me, I just have the opportunity to make stuff. So I get to be, creatively manipulate materials to bring things that weren't in reality before, from whatever, those materials might be. Yeah.
Physical thing.
Yeah. And those all, and I get a lot. So I have a course where I help small business owners that are in the maker space. I grow and scale their business and get to, like, where they don't have to work a corporate job and they can, be selling and producing custom furniture and working for themselves. Right. And a lot of the questions I get are around stuff like, how do I propose a project to somebody that I've never built before? And then how do I, charge for my time? And I say to them, I was like, well, where does your experience lie? Right. You're not going to build something, like, I'm not going to sell you on me, building you a brand new car. Like, I don't know. I don't have any experience. And if you're doing that, like, you're probably not going to be really good at this business. And you might want to take a step backwards and get some experience and get out there first before you start selling to people. Because ethics wise, it's probably not the best thing to say, is what I like to tell them. But I say, you always break the process down to what you do know when you're developing a new product. And you can attest to this with this business too, right? You don't just do random stuff that you've never experienced before. You break those things that are new down into the experiences you do have to mitigate the lack of experience you have in, say, one facet of it, right? It might be like, if you're working with metal and you have only experience with wood, well, you're not starting at ground zero. You still know how to make and manipulate things of a different material. So take those experiences and apply them to this. And then you're going to cut 50% out of the unknown out of the equation. Like, that's kind of how I look at being creative is, like, I know 85 or 90% of how to do the thing I want to do. I was like, that 10% will be the discovery you see in the content.
Figure it out when we get there.
Yeah, I'm jumping right in that fire. But that's what you see in the content, right? It's like, I know how to do. I might not have ever done it before, but I know how to do this.
You know what's cool and interesting?
Point.
Yeah, you lean into that. Like you said, I'm jumping right into that fire. Like, you guys lean into that, where most people, I think, would edit that out and fake it till you make it, right? Like, oh yeah, well, of course I knew how to figure this. Of course we built this thing and we had no trouble doing it, and it was a perfect, no. And I think that is where, like, the entertainment value lies.
100%.
When I first started creating content and I started to try to, like, scale it, like, I sort of was creating content, man, since I was doing it in the car days before I started this company.
Yeah.
So back whenever Instagram and Facebook and all that was like early on, right?
Yeah.
And then so I was making content there just because like it was cool and you're sharing what you're working on and your projects you're building and that sort of thing. But then I started to be more strategic about it, and I started thinking I need to make content in these 3 buckets, and they were all the 3 E's I called them: was entertainment, education, and escapism. And if I can check one of those boxes, like there's value in it and there's a reason for someone to watch. And if you can mix a couple of them together, if you can be entertaining and educational, you're really going to do a good job. And sometimes it's just a pure escapism. Like if I'm going on a camping trip in one of my trucks and, you know, it's just like people want to live vicariously through you or whatever the thing is, like that works too. But if it's just like, if you're creating content to just create content and there's no real strategy behind it, no one's going to watch and you're not going to build an audience.
Yeah. Well, you might get lucky. And that's the thing I think people forget about content is that, like, if you develop in your business a product and you bring it to market, there's a lot of investment in that, right? There's a lot, you got to put up a ton of time and a bunch of money, and there's all kinds of like, maybe if this and then that.
It's risk.
And there's
all risk.
Ton of risk, right? People put the same amount of pressure on themselves when it comes to creating content. It shouldn't be that way. A piece of content is a test. And I say this all the time. You have to look at everything you create in content as a test for the next thing and then slightly improve upon it every single time you put it out there. And there's nothing wrong with having absolutely no plan or roadmap at the beginning and just throwing stuff out there and kind of throwing crap at the wall and seeing what sticks, right?
You got to learn from it. You got to be smart about it. That's
but then you have to look at it like you were saying, and then you'd be like, all right, this worked, this didn't. I didn't like doing this, and this kind of worked. So how can I take the things I like to do from the thing that kind of worked and then put it towards the thing that did work and evaluate it? And then you go, you know, oh, this was more entertaining. This was more educational. This was more escapism, or whatever categories you want to use. And then start leaning into those things and testing in your future content. And if you want to create content in any regard, you're right. Having a plan is probably going to work to your benefit.
It's going to be better than not having a plan.
But I think a lot of people hesitate to get started because they don't have that plan. And I'm like, all right, listen, just jump in, right? Get started, make a video, grab your phone, do whatever. Did you like it? Did people like it? You know, you have the benefit. YouTube's going to push stuff out there. They want people watching your content. And if you're going to live on that platform,
YouTube's a beast though, dude.
It's a monster, right? Oh, and it takes so much time to get good at it. But regardless, it's like, don't be afraid to try something. And that's in any regard in life, in my opinion. That comes through in my content. I think, like, go ahead and try it. Probably not going to die. There's a lot, you might, but you know.
I don't know. I saw that TikTok hack video with the upside down table saw.
Don't do that, but do other things.
That one might kill you.
Yes. But there's no harm in getting started, right? There's don't have any fear to get started. And I think us as both, you know, younger guys that own a business that are trying to scale and grow and do big things and help improve and change people's lives, you know, you have to get started somewhere. And you didn't, like, the plan I had when I got started is nowhere close to where I'm at now. I'm so sure the same for you and a lot of people out there. But then when you get into it, if you want to be good, that's when you have to take a step backward. And like, that's where my football training days come into me. And I'm like, I perform best if I can learn something, put it into application, evaluate it in application, tweak it, reapply it, and then just continue on that path. It's just like in football, you learn to play, at least at a high level, you learn to play on paper. Then you go out on the field, you walk through it against dummies, right? Or spots on the ground. Then you walk through it against people. Then you go through it at half speed. Then you go through it at full speed and full pads, right? And all that's on film. You go back, you look at the film, what worked, what didn't, why didn't it? Then go back on the field, change it, adapt it, put it into play again, watch that film, evaluate, get to a point that where game day, when you're against an opponent that you can't predict, that you have as much information as you can on them, you're going to run that play. You're going to have a general understanding of what they're going to do. You're going to perform it to the best of your ability. And then you're going to go back after the game. Did it work? Watch it on film, change it, adapt it, apply it to the next problem that's coming out. And like, that's how I function, right? So there's no, like, to what you said before, in certain areas of life and businesses, there's no like start and finish. Football is the same thing. Like, yeah, you could say the end of the season is the finish line, right? But like up until the last play of the Super Bowl, those guys are literally adapting and tweaking and changing and everything that they can to just perform slightly better than they did the last time they did it. And then that season's over. And they get right back in the cycle.
That's just the start of the next season.
They're right back in the cycle for next year.
Yeah.
Right. It never actually ends. And so that's kind of where I function. And that's how I look at, you know, the business side of things as I do is like, if you want to go from being decent at something to being good at it, like take a step back, evaluate where you are, where you want to go, where can you start to make small tweaks and changes, and then move that forward. And that's whether you're a business owner or you're making content or you're building things. You're the finish on your last car or piece, whatever. You probably wanted the next one to just be slightly better,
a little better,
right?
Yeah.
You probably
always
trying to be a little better, and that's the inherent. That's life. And
for a lot of people, some people aren't wired that way though.
Well,
some people are
get
like
wired that way. No, I mean, like,
good enough.
And that's fine. You can put out minimum viable products, and if you want to be in business, you can make a lot of money. And a lot of people do. We were talking about the other day. Like, you can make little squirt guns and put them on the end caps at Walmart, sell them for $2 and be a billionaire. Yeah. Like, there's opportunity to do that. But I promise you that squirt gun that was $2 took so much evaluation to make it $2 because it was probably $2.10. You know what I mean? At some point, and you got to take a step back and look at it and go, this product might be trash, but it's the trash I want to sell, right?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And whatever, and you got to tweak it and manipulate it and make sure it fits and change the color and materials and get those cheap and blah, blah, blah. There's always that constant improvement, evaluation, and all that kind of stuff. And I just find that stuff to be super, super, super interesting when you get into it. And that's how I look at my content creation, right? Is like, I started out, I thought I wanted to be this like authoritative coaching style voice with my stuff, is like teach people what I've learned, help them get to my point. I used to get super agitated because I felt that I was such a better builder than a lot of better content creators. And I'd be like, I build such better stuff. Like, well, I don't understand why that's performing so much better than mine when mine's built so much better. And you're like, that's a different game.
Yeah.
It's not the game that I'm in if I'm making content. And then eventually I got to a point I was like, well, what makes me different? And what do I like to do? And those are two huge factors in my content. What makes me different is I was like, I'm willing to try and do new things and have my experience in doing so on camera. I was like, okay. And then if I enjoy that, that's where I was like, I'm going to differentiate myself from the rest of content creators by doing that. And if you're in the maker community, you probably realize that I was one of the first guys that was like trying new stuff, personality forward, failing, putting it on camera, showing other people that it's okay to be a human being, and then pushing the envelope on all kinds of stuff. A lot of other people are coming into it. I think YouTube as a platform is sort of turning more into people investing in people instead of people using it for search, as it's still the number 2 search engine on the planet. But for YouTube creators to build real audiences, it's much more focused on people and people,
right?
Not searching to try to find things. So anyway, you get into that. I was like, I like to have fun. I think that I'm at least sometimes more relatable and funnier maybe than other people. I'm gonna put that stuff in my content. And that came to me when I hired my last video guy, Sam. We were like having more fun off camera, and he's like, I'm gonna start putting this stuff in the videos. I was like, do whatever you want, dude. I just don't take up more of my time. and like there, you see a couple videos, and there was a shift where like I'm hanging from the rafters, and we're like chest bumping and having a good time in a couple videos, and we really start to see people that are like, wow, you have so much fun in your content. And I was like, dang, that's my differentiation point. That's who I am. And that's what I'm going to lean into. And so that's what you can see now in my content is like, I'm not acting like something I'm not. Like we're having a blast, or I'm getting my ass kicked, like, and whatever's happening in between. And I'm trying to be as informational and educational as I can in balance, with what I'm doing.
Entertainment.
Yeah. And that was intentional. To your point, is like, that was my plan. So
right,
that's kind of what we're executing.
Well, and you have to have fun. You have to enjoy what you're doing, or it's not sustainable, and it's got a shelf life. And it goes back to like just getting burnt out and being like, all right, I'm over this. It's not fun anymore.
And if you put yourself in a position to enjoy what you're doing, it comes through in your work, regardless of what the work is, right? And you can, in any business, anywhere you are in life, find the things that you do enjoy that are relatable to what you're doing for work, and you will find yourself doing more work that is enjoyable more often, right? It's not like such a taxing thing. Like we're wrapping up vacation here. I'm going home tomorrow. Like I'm pumped to get back into the shop to solve some of the problems that have popped up, right? To like get my hands back into a few things that we had going before I left. Like I don't look at it and go, oh, damn it, vacation's over. We're back to work. It's like I worked every day I was here, but I like it.
Yeah,
I enjoy it.
Well, and it's the same thing people ask me, like, how did you do this? How did you build that? How do you keep going? How are you still up at 2 a.m. working on this thing? And it's passion. You know what I mean? Like if you're passionate about it, it'll create the energy, and that energy is what keeps you going day after day, hour after hour. And then you don't really think about the fact that you're working so much because you're enjoying it. And then 5 years later, you look back and see how far you came, and you're like, Jesus, how did I get here?
Yeah.
But it's like, if you enjoy it and it's fun, you're not thinking about it.
Time
being
flies.
Work.
Yeah. You do definitely have those times though when you need to like get yourself out of the whirlwind take a step back, evaluate to make sure that you're the hurricane you've created isn't going to die. But no doubt, and that's the hard part, right? Is you get a lot of perspective of other people that are like, how do I find that thing I'm passionate about? Or they have something they're passionate about and they want to turn it into their job. It is a delicate balance, right?
That's as soon as your hobby becomes a job, it becomes work,
and it's way different.
And it completely changes the dynamic.
Yeah,
and it can work for a while.
It can,
and then you're like, you lose the passion, and it's just life. I mean, it's just ebbs and flows, and that's going to happen.
And I think what's interesting is that your passion will also change. Like we were talking before we started recording, or you might have been recording. I don't even know. But talking about like business as being like the infinite game, right? And for me, the longer I keep working for myself and keep doing stuff, the more I fall in love with that game. The more I fall in love with like the little tweaks and the little changes to do some stuff to drive more revenue or build a bigger following or all the numbers that go into running a business and stuff, right? When it started out, I was like, man, I just want to build cool shit. Like, yeah, I still want to build cool shit, but I want my cool shit to be seen by a lot of people to inspire them to build cool shit. And I also want to sell cool shit because that helps me build more cool shit to help inspire other people to go build more shit. So like you look at it and you're like, that game for me, there's no end.
Is there?
And that's kind of where my passion is moved more towards.
This is a question I was thinking about the other day too. And it was, the core of the question is like, what motivates you? It's a loaded question. And I think I could narrow it down more than that. But I was talking to someone else recently, and I've talked to a lot of people about this. And most people, money is the big motivator for most people. And it's not for me at all. I couldn't care less about money directly. But my big motivator is fun. Can I have fun doing it?
Yeah.
But the problem is you have to be able to afford to have the fun.
Afford the fun.
So ultimately it sort of comes back to money. And like, obviously like money just makes the world go round. You have to make money and to be a business, you have to be profitable because you have to employ people. And I'm paying, I don't know how many salaries and health insurance and 401ks and all these things that we provide. So we have to be a profitable business, obviously. And we have to be smart about things. We have to continue to grow. We have to be able to buy inventory. So like, thankfully I have like Alex, my numbers nerd, who like helps make sure that all that stuff is in place. And he's trying to balance me, or I'm like, hell yeah, let's go buy a helicopter. Yeah. That sounds awesome. He's like, pump the brakes.
We're not at helicopter status yet. Maybe we get like, I don't know, a drone. Let's start a drone.
Right.
I have 7. Yeah.
Right. But like, you know, fun is really my big motivator. Like if it's not fun anymore, I'm checked out.
Yeah.
Like, screw it.
Yeah.
Next, find me something fun to do.
For me, it was very interesting and loaded question. So I'm not an athlete anymore, but like my brain and headspace lives. Like I was an athlete for more of my life than I wasn't, at least now. And I'm 34. Right. And so the mindset of like the reason I get up every morning didn't really exist until I got married and now that I have a daughter, you know, like those reasons for being didn't exist. And I was always a motivated, hardworking person. And I say to people, it's like that whole script flipped once I met my wife. And then again, once my daughter was born, right? You just have a purpose, but that's only been, my daughter's, 17 months old.
Right.
I'm 34. So it's like, what about 32 years leading into that? Right. And, it's like, well, for me, motivation's like, I look at the money conversation very similarly. Like money is freedom, right? And a lot of people don't look at things that way. And I grew up in a family where money was tension, where it wasn't an issue, but it was tense. Like it was hanging overhead, right? There was no like, just freely go do whatever you kind of want to, who cares what it costs. Never happened. And I grew up in like a pretty well-off suburb of Pittsburgh where my friends and stuff, their families had huge houses and all kinds of cars, and we did all kinds of fun stuff. And I was never treated differently or anything like that. But like my mom and dad grew up in the hood and like, kind of worked their way out, put us in a better school district kind of thing. And my school district also had the communities that were a little bit more impoverished and like where, Section 8 housing and all kinds of stuff that was not at that like elite status. So we had a very, very vast scope of, types of
just
income.
Diverse, like
through the people I grew up with, and none of that really mattered. Like people are people, and then I get to college and I start playing football, and I meet kids that are chasing rabbits to eat dinner, and it was a whole different world to me. I was like, holy hell, like this is, your struggles were so much different than mine. But anyway, money changes all that, right? Money alleviates the pressure to allow you to do the things that you want to do. So that's how I look at money. I was like, do I work for money necessarily? No, but I work for the freedom. Like I got to working for myself because I didn't want to be cut again. And in the NFL, I got cut 13 times. I played for 5 different teams. That's
a grind.
It was a grind. And the feeling I got the last time I got cut by the Steelers, I was like, I never want to go through this again, because everything I had, it was all out on the line, right? Like I had a really good camp, and weirdly enough, it was like 9 years ago to like Thursday. It was like next Monday, actually, of when we're recording this. But all of that stuff, like I wanted freedom. I didn't want to be bound to someone else telling me what I could or couldn't do, or what my job was going to be. I was chasing that for so long with football. I wanted to alleviate that pressure. And then I found that money is how you alleviate that pressure, right? Because you can't do anything in life without paying for it.
For sure, yeah.
And so I'm motivated by that freedom, which I know comes from money, which then I know goes back into that infinite game of business, and trying to get money to come to you. Like that's what the game of life is. That's the world we live in. It's unfortunate to say it that way, but like, attracting money to you is the way the world works. And so what motivates me though, to the core now is like, I want to give my daughter the things that I couldn't have as a kid, right? Or I want to have the opportunity to at least offer those opportunities to her, and our future kids, and my wife. I want my wife my wife's an attorney, so she works like a dog. And like, I don't want her to have to do that forever if she doesn't want to. Mm-hmm. And that comes down to me, is like, if I can create enough financial freedom for my family, then if one day she's like, I don't want to go to court anymore, we can afford that opportunity. And like, my mom and dad are, my dad just retired, and they've worked little. I remember my dad was working full time as a custodian growing up, and cutting 27 yards of grass in the evenings to make an extra couple bucks to afford some of the things we wanted to do. And my mom owns a hair salon. She's still working now, and like, they're hitting retirement age, and it's something that's like, they've had to literally work their entire lives, from when they met. My mom was 20, and I'm like, I don't know if I ever want to retire, but I know I don't want the pressure that they're feeling now later on in their life.
Yeah.
60s,
70s.
Like, what are we going to do? We're going to have enough money and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, how can I just axe that?
How do I avoid that situation?
Yeah. And so that, and then on top of it, I've switched my love of like football's game to like playing business as a game, and like there's just so much to learn. And I've really fallen in love with learning.
I know you were talking about reading all these books, and you're telling me I need to read books. I'm like, listen, bro, I can't read.
I read like, and I'm the opposite. I'm like, I'm such an idiot that like, I don't know on anything, and I want to know. And that's like I guess it goes back to like, I don't have a partner in my business, right? So you have someone you can bounce things off of. And this is just a very hyper specific example to you, but like in any regards, it's like the loneliness I feel as a business owner, have felt, has always been like, I need to learn these skills in order to then apply them to whatever I'm trying to do. And for a long time, that was in my trade. It was like building furniture or remodeling, right? I need to learn those skills in order to make a sustainable living. And I've hit a certain point where it's like, I know what my core product offering is, and I don't really need any more skills as they pertain to that. I can either pay someone else to do it, or I have the skill already. Mm-hmm. So now it's like, to become a leader as my business owner, I have to work on those skills. And I've fallen in love with that part, and that's really what motivates me, because it's like a brand new landscape. Right?
Yeah,
we're talking about.
Yeah, you're in an exciting new thing, and then you're gonna make some headway, and you're gonna progress, and that's gonna be exciting, because you feel like you're winning, and you'll hit some roadblocks or lose a little bit, and you'll learn from it. And
if you can have the perspective to realize that like that will never change if you don't. Yeah, I mean, if you realize that the growth experiment of learning things will never end, there's no end. You can't know everything, right? It's the same thing. So then I don't know what there is to not be excited about on just becoming a better version of yourself every single day. And so peeling back even further from like giving my daughter and wife a great life, is that just like, I'm super excited and motivated that I can be a better version of myself tomorrow but I know that it's on me in order to do that and stuff.
Right.
So like, that's my like ladder of, I guess you could call it of motivation.
Yeah. I feel the same way, you know, but you know, it's like fun is at the top of the charts, and how it trickles down to like, you know, doing fun things with my kids and, you know, taking them on trips and having experiences and all these things. I don't want them to be spoiled with money, you know, or anything like that.
Correct.
Because I just don't.
I completely agree with you there.
Yeah. Like that's a bad.
It's not a spoil. For me, it's like, I don't want to make a ton of money to just give my kids everything that they've ever wanted. It's more like my family, like I do believe in like certain core things, right? Like I'm not going to get into like an argument my wife and I have constantly about something that may pertain to secondary education and my viewpoints on it versus hers. But like, I'll say this, I went to college because I earned a scholarship. I wouldn't have gone because I couldn't have afforded it if I didn't have a scholarship. Well, but when I was 10, I was like, I'm going to effing college and I'm going on scholarship. Right. So like, it wasn't like that psyche, because I knew my mom and dad would have killed themselves to put me into college if I wanted to go. Like it wasn't their fault or nothing that they did. I just knew that the financial burden of college was huge. And that if I wanted to go, I'm going to have to find a way to pay for it myself. So I was like,
so
like
did
sports.
you get
I'm good
into
at sports? Okay.
So did you get into playing football because you knew you wanted to, that was your only path through college?
No, I just loved football.
Okay.
I mean, I liked to play sport. I loved baseball.
So you wanted to play college football.
But then when I sniffed it and I realized that like, I'm pretty good at this, and coaches were like, you're pretty good at this. And like, I was like, I could have a future in this. And then there's guys you looked up to that were in high school when I was a kid that I was like, oh, you know, this dude Moose went and played at Notre Dame and everyone loved him. And this other kid, BJ, went to Penn State and everyone loved him. I was like, I want to be that. Like, and then I'm
going to be a
10 years old.
Yeah.
I'm going to chase that.
Got it.
And so you get to a certain point and you're like,
I didn't know if there was like something else that you're like, I want to go to college and study this thing, and football is my only way to do it.
Yeah.
And then that led
no,
to
it wasn't a study. It was
like
just
that.
Get there, right?
But that's where your viewpoints with your wife differ, because she's a lawyer. So that's the only course really is like go to college, become a lawyer. And like, that's the way to do it.
Yeah. So and she had to, and like her dad's an attorney, her dad's an attorney, and they are brilliant people. And my wife is incredibly good at school. Like I was good at school, but she's like so good, you know, like president of this and that and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And when she talks about it, I was like, man, that's incredible. And then she's like, oh yeah, I did that in college. She was the president of all sororities at Penn State in college. And you're like, what? You're like, I could like, you know, I could barely get through like, you know, an economics class or something. But so in all of that, I just want the opportunity to afford my kids for hopefully in the future, the ability to do things that they might want to do via experience. I'm not a person for handouts. I'm not someone who's like,
they got to earn it, right? That's how I am. That's like,
my wife's like, we'll pay for our kids to go to undergrad. And I was like, well, will we? You know, and like, that's, you know, there's a little back and forth there.
It's tough though too, when you can afford to do something and then telling your kid no.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Oh,
you know, even at a young age, like maybe you haven't hit it at 17 months, but you know, I've got an 11-year-old.
Yeah.
An 8-year-old and a 1-year-old. And it's like the older kids, like they want to do this thing or they want that thing or they want this pair of shoes. And it's like, I can very easily buy you this thing.
Yep.
But there's a side of me, it's like out of principle, I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, remember how I asked you to clean your room for the last 2 weeks? And well, if I clean my room, can I get $10? No, you cannot get $10 for it. It is expected of you for your room to be clean. I'm not rewarding you for doing the work that's expected of you. You know what I mean? Like
that's how my dad was.
Yeah.
And he like it was expected to do a certain amount of things. And then if you wanted paid to do more, you had to do more.
Yeah. And that's where I got with them, where I'm like, okay, well, let's go outside the ordinary. Like I see a lot of dirty windows around this house. I see like other things that need done. Like if you want to earn some money, you need to go outside of like the normal scope of what's expected and go above and beyond. And you can get some money for it or whatever.
And
it's tough because sometimes I give in. I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I mean, I can't imagine. I'm sure it'll hit me quite quickly moving forward in life. But I remember as a kid, it's like if I wanted anything, I had to go make a buck in order to buy said thing. Like my mom and dad wouldn't just hand me money. So like my dad, like I said, he cut 27 yards or so when we were growing up. And if I wanted to make a buck, I'd go trim the grass or I'd go run the weed whacker, right? Here's $5 or $7. I'd go buy a pack of cards or we had to buy CDs and go to the store when we were kids.
Disc jockey.
Ride my bike down there, right? So like that is how I grew up, with a mentality that if I wanted something, I had to work for it. And I've never had a real job, but that hustle has always been how I've approached things. You know, you could say,
never had a real job.
Yeah, like the NFL, if you want to call that a real job, sure. But like I've never had a real job.
It's so funny.
Like, you know, I've never like clocked in and got a paycheck. Like that was the only time in my life.
Football was like
football. And so when I got done with that, the only means I knew was like, if I want to make a buck, I got to do some kind of work. Well, what kind of work can I do? And I was like, I'll put my hand back in the dirt. My dad worked construction stuff before he got into being a custodian, and we did every job around the house you could possibly do. I was like, I'll get into that. And so I'm hoping that I can pass on those lessons to my children in some way or another, without just handing them like, hey, here's a thing, you know, here's the money to do it.
Instill the right morals and values in them to
correct,
know how to work. That's the thing that terrifies me. You know, I say morals and values, like as parents with any kids, boys, girls, whatever, there's a level of fear that you have as they grow up, right? There's an innocence about them when they're a child that you don't want them to be broken, right? Because they're just like these sweet, innocent children. And as soon as they get exposed to like the real world, like it all changes. And they're so pure at a young age, and you just don't want it to leave. So like I think that's a lot of the fear of when you have kids that are growing up, like that's leaving that innocence is a fear. But also I think in the back of people's minds, a lot of the fear of growing up and the innocence being broken is, did you do a good job as a parent setting them up to make the right decisions in the circumstance, right? So like they are at a party and everyone's drinking or doing drugs or whatever the thing is, like, did you instill the right morals and values in your child to make the right decisions when you're not there? And I think in the back of people's minds, they don't realize that that's part of their fear of their kid going to college or their kid growing up. But I think that's where it stems from. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. And as my kids get older, and my 11-year-old is like 16, you know, and I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like, you know, I know I'm not worried about, like, she's such a good kid. And I'm like, I'm not concerned really about her. I know that she's going to make the right decisions. But then I started thinking, I'm like, this is the fear. This is the fear. Isn't so much that they're going to the place. It's like, did you do a good job as a parent? And like facing that reality later in life. I think that's where it stems from.
And 100%. I mean, one of the biggest motivators in human existence is fear, right? And even if you think you don't have fear of anything, like, as dads, we have those fears,
right.
And when you take kind of take a step backwards, if you look at yourself, you're like, you know, you could probably pull thousands of moments out of our own lives where we made decisions that have impacted us long term.
Oh, for sure.
And then, like, for me, you know, you go back to that, like, you know, drinking and stuff at a young age. I was so focused on, as a kid, I was like, I'm not gonna drink till I have a scholarship to college. And I had friends and stuff that, like, dude, I love these dudes like a brother, but they started drinking and stuff earlier than me. And we'll talk about naive, you know, young egos and inexperience and stuff, like thinking you're better than, so like, oh, whatever, that end. But my parents put me in the right mindset to realize that, like, if I wanted to be the best football player at my high school, I had to make sacrifices other people weren't willing to make. Now, I didn't know that until I was
later on in life,
more mature and grown up. But I realized that, like, I gave things up at a young age because I wanted something then more than I wanted the other thing. And like, that's all you can do for your kids. You just put them in a situation. It's like, you want this result or you want that result? I know experience will give you this result. Kids don't give a two shits about experience, right? That's why they don't listen to us. But here, you want to follow that path? This is the best I can do to put you in that situation. And then hopefully you make the right decisions down the line. And I got super fortunate. My dad's like, you can always outwork, you know, the person in front of you. You're not going to have the God-gifted ability that they're going to have. You're not going to have a lot of these other intangibles. You can't control that stuff. Control how you approach it, control your emotions, and control the amount of work you're willing to put in. The rest, it'll happen one way or another. You can't control it. And I think, like, that's, like, I need to instill that into my daughter, instill that into my kids in the future. And then
everything will work itself out.
Hopefully they make the right decisions.
Yeah.
Like you were saying.
Everything will work itself out. If you're willing to do the work no one else is willing to do, and you're willing to outwork everyone else around you, like, you're going to be good.
Yeah.
If there's those two things you take away, like, you're good.
Do that. Yeah. Be that.
All right. I got a bunch of questions from Instagram for you.
Let's hit a few.
Let's hit a few. All right, this one comes from Retriever Woodworks. I'm assuming this is somebody you might know. Is it?
No.
Oh, okay.
Definitely one of my followers.
Quick picture there. All right. Is John's real favorite Pennsylvania team the Eagles?
No. Next question. What kind of question is that? Get out of here. There's nothing to like about the Eagles. Even if you live in Pennsylvania and have your whole life, what is there to like about the Eagles?
I don't know. I don't follow football or sports or any of it.
Gosh, I feel bad.
When we were fishing the other day, did you say you were playing basketball at one point too?
Oh, no. That wasn't. No. Basketball.
Who said they were playing basketball? Anyways.
Yeah. I have 9 anchors in my left shoulder, like bringing it above here. I'm built like a T-Rex. I got these little like choppy arms here. So basketball wasn't my sport.
Rap Easy, Michael Rappaport. What is one tool you can't live without? That's a good question.
Ooh, I'm going to assume he's talking about my wood
Your shop.
Yeah. I would say my table saw, the table saw is like the heart of any workshop. And you can pretty much do anything that you can do on other tools with the table saw. So if I couldn't live without, if I had to start over again, that'd be the one tool I would keep, and I would build everything else around that.
Yeah. I often go back and forth. Like if I had to get rid of everything, what would I keep? And it's always a toss up between the welder and sewing machine.
I was going to say the welder was number 2, because if you want to get into metalwork, the welder can,
they're valuable.
Open the
you
door.
Can make a lot of money with that one tool. Same with sewing.
Tool,
like that's a rare skill these days.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So, I have a leather sewing machine, and we did some leather work for I built a guitar for Jocko, and we made the leather bag.
Oh yeah.
And that was,
it's tough.
Oh,
there's a lot to know about it. Yeah.
So tough. And you're like, we're just going to push this thing in a straight line. You're like, no.
Like, oh, I sewed my fingers together. Great. Oh man. I don't know. I'm assuming this is a Pittsburgh question. I don't run something. They have some obscure handle. South side or north side?
Okay, so the south side is like the party district in Pittsburgh, and the north side's where the stadiums are. As I'm no longer like 23, I don't go down to the south side as much as I used to. But I do have a wealth of you could call them valuable experiences in my life from my time spent in the south side. But the north side, the north side now is like, it's super clean. They've put a ton of money into it. It's where it's not Heinz Field anymore. It's AccuSure Stadium or something. PNC Park. They're both over there. It's a nice place.
Got it. Interesting. I didn't know.
The Yinzers are coming out.
The Yinzers.
In your question.
So I went to school, in Pennsylvania. We were talking about that the other day. I knew some people that were in West Virginia because it was so close to a school we went to. And I had never heard the word yins until I got up there.
Yeah.
I'm
down
here.
Not real work.
It's a y'all down here.
Yeah.
It's yins up there.
Yes.
And I'm like,
listeners
yins.
will appreciate that clarity. Yeah. Yins is Pittsburghese for what y'all is for like the rest of the country.
Yeah. Pittsburgh area, even like Morgantown, West Virginia, whole little, yins. I'm like, what the hell?
Talking's hard.
Oh, man. Jeff Scheider says, how did John make his leap into running his own business, juggle being a dad and a husband? We've kind of talked a bit about that.
Yeah.
We won't go deep into that one. Seth Hartfrant wants to know, what's the hardest thing you've ever built?
I'm assuming he means most difficult, because physically hardest would
like a piece of steel.
Yeah, probably.
But yes, the most difficult project you have built.
We've weirdly, when you run a business around building things, you try to build things that aren't hard, because
you try to simplify it. Time is money.
Yeah, because you make money on things that you know how to do and doing them efficiently and quickly and stuff. So, early on, like building full kitchens is hard, like really hard, right? You get into homes, and especially like where I'm from, like my house is 100 years old. We did the kitchen. We ran into a bunch of issues on square walls, floors, blah, 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 blah. So like that project was really hard.
You guys built the cabinets in there or no?
Yeah, we built all the cabinets and stuff.
Is that like
that's where Damn It Jordan was
started?
Established. Yeah, Jordan took a lot of heat there because he gained a bunch of experience in learning how to build while doing that kitchen. But like, we just built a conference table, right? It had an epoxy inlaid center logo that you can put challenge coins around it. It has 2 7-foot tables on each. It's 14-foot overall. We cut the centerpiece into it. The base has powder-coated carbon steel and stainless steel with LEDs run throughout it and like removable panels in the center. It has all these parts and stuff. It was a very difficult build because it has a bunch of hard parts in it. And well, we knew how to do each part individually. So like being hard and difficult was only in like the sense of that, like if I asked the normal builder to build that, they probably couldn't, just because it has so many different materials and so many different parts and stuff going into it. So like saying the hardest thing I've ever built is like, it's typically that next project where we're like pushing the limit, right? Like Jocko's guitar was really difficult only because we wanted like a crystal clear guitar that had his jujitsu belts in it, right? And like we ran into a bunch of issues with like the thickness and the clarity of the epoxy, and we hit it was really hard. But like, is it that hard? So I don't know. Those questions are always hard for me to answer. I don't have something that sticks out that was like, that was so difficult. Like I wanted to die.
T-Dog, you ready for this one? Retro Fitness Doug wants to know John's favorite moment of the NFL.
Ooh, that's probably going to be the only time I ever got into a game as an active roster player, which was ironically the last game that I ever played in the NFL. But it was super cool. So when I got started, just keep it short, I was an undrafted free agent to the Tennessee Titans. I graduated college on like April 9th. I was in Tennessee on April 7th. I flew back for graduation, flew back to Tennessee for the summer. So I'm there all summer long. We're in the second week of training camp. I'm putting on my shoes to go out to practice. A tackle got hurt the day before in practice. I was a guard and center. I was a low man on the totem pole. They released me 20 minutes before we're supposed to go out on the field. So pack up my truck, get all my stuff, driving 9 hours home. I get home, my life's over, right? I've never gone through anything like this, blah, blah, blah. The Cleveland Browns signed me 2 days later, 2 days before a game. I go and I end up playing in that game. It was awesome, blah, 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 blah. They released me at the end of training camp. So the reason I tell you that is because we were playing when I was with the Steelers in my last season in the NFL, we were playing the Cleveland Browns, and someone went down on the O-line. I was the backup going in, so I actually get into a game. In like the third quarter, I get into the game against the Cleveland Browns, which was pretty cool. And I think I had like 18 friends and family members there at the game because it was a home game, and it was the end of the season and stuff. And we weren't going to the playoffs. We were 8-8, and so they were like giving tickets away to go to the game and stuff. Blah blah blah. I had all these people there. I get into the game. I end up getting some and we didn't know at the time it was going to be literally the last game I ever played in, but. It was awesome to be able to share that experience with people that I loved and people that were bought into my journey. I grew up in Pittsburgh. I went to the University of Pittsburgh. I was playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It was like this all culminating kind of thing. Yeah. So that was easily the coolest experience. And then it just happened to be against a team that I previously had played for.
Right. Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, I know we're tight on time. I got nothing else unless you have something you want to talk about.
No, this has been awesome. I think what you're doing here is fantastic. And I'm super grateful for the opportunity to sit down. I'll be back next year because Hilton Head's like our yearly vacation. So hopefully we can get together then and hopefully stay in touch here, doing some more stuff. And once again, like I'm just grateful to be here, man.
Yeah, man.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. And John, tell everybody where they can find you. Sorry.
You can punch my name in on pretty much any social platform. And I'll be there. The big head, beard, probably pretty loud. But it's, John Malecki Builds on YouTube and Facebook, John Malecki on Instagram, John Malecki on TikTok. Where else? I don't tweet very much, but I'm on there. LinkedIn, you can check out my website, johnmalecki.com. Pretty much, like I said.
There's some cool stuff there, too, because they can download plans to build stuff.
Yeah, you can get plans to build stuff. We've got a bunch of merchandise that I think is pretty cool.
We had a big discussion about that before.
Yeah, and then, like I said, I just launched a course that if you're a maker, you're looking to take your business to the next level. We're helping hundreds of small businesses that are in the maker space, like understand the back end of what goes into building that kind of a business. We got a really cool community going on there. I just bought a sawmill, so we're selling slabs and stuff. So you can check all that out. That's all hubbed at johnmalecki.com.
Cool. Awesome. Guys, thank you so much for listening and watching. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.